FAFSA or the DREAM Act application, whichever one is applicable to you, you're applying for a Cal Grant. So like I said, both of those applications, I mean, you can only do one or the other. But if you're a FAFSA filer, that's going to give you consideration for a Cal Grant. There's nothing else you need to do.
Right. So since all high schools have to report to the California State Commission every student's name and their GPA, as long as they have a California school on their FAFSA form, they've applied for the Cal Grant, correct?
That's right.
Right. And so since my parents are divorced or never were married, do I need both their financial aid information for FAFSA?
No, typically you're going to provide the information for the parent that you live with. There may be some other sort of unusual circumstances, but if your parents are divorced or legally separated, and you're living with one or the other, you're only going to provide the financial information for the parent that you're living with.
Okay, great. And then it's important for people to know that the CSS profile that some private schools use, which is an addition to the FAFSA form, they will require both parents' information unless you're able to get a non-custodial waiver, meaning like, let's say one of your parents are not in the picture or something like that. But that is the one exception where the CSS profile will require both parents, whether they're divorced or separated. So I don't have contact with one of my parents. That happens for some of our students. So what can they do for some information? Do they feel that they still need both parents' information or not?
So, I mean, it depends. So if they, if we're talking about the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, if they live with one parent and don't have contact with the other, well, then obviously they're going to use the information for the parent they live with. If they are living with another relative, for example, and they don't have contact with their parents or their one parent, then the application actually says you still have to provide financial information from the biological parent. Now, if there's extenuating circumstances, then what we recommend is that they fill out the application to the best of their ability, with whatever information they have, and then they visit the financial aid office at the school. The main thing is if they're living with an aunt or a grandparent or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or friends, they can't use that financial information from those people unless they've legally been adopted, or some other really extenuating circumstances. So they probably want to, sort of guesstimate, if possible, the income from the other parent if they have any clue. And allow that application to go through and be submitted on time, and then visit the financial aid office at the college.
Okay, really good to know. And some other questions my student may have is, my parent does not have a Social Security number. Can I still apply for aid?
The parents don't have, or
the parents does not have a Social Security number. Can they still apply for aid?
Absolutely. So if the parents don't have a Social Security number, but the student does, the student will apply for FAFSA. Everything will be exactly the same. The only difference is the parents won't be able to create what's called the FSA ID. So that means that they're going to have to fill out and mail out a paper signature page. But you can absolutely apply for aid. If the parents don't have a social and the student's undocumented, then you're going to do the DREAM Act application, and you don't need, no one needs a social to fill that out.
Fantastic. And I did not apply for DACA, and I'm a dreamer. Can I still apply for financial aid?
Yeah, and that's a good question because it's really confusing for some students, and it's because DACA, and there's a lot of DACA is still so very much up in the air in terms of what's going to happen with it. But it's confusing because DACA and the DREAM Act applications sort of serve the same cohort. It's the same people. But the thing to remember is that DACA literally has nothing to do with the DREAM Act application. So whether or not you've had DACA, you've had it previously, you've never had it, it doesn't matter in terms of applying for aid. You could absolutely apply for aid regardless of your DACA status.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. A lot of people don't know that the California government has set up the California DREAM Act even before DACA was set up. So there has been a lot of, opportunities and legislators who have fought for a lot of undocumented students to know that there is financial aid out there. Some other questions students may have is, to apply for a loan, do I have to go to a regular bank, or can I take any amount out for a student loan?
Well, first of all, loans are sometimes a necessary evil, and so, if taking out a loan is the difference between going to school and not going to school, then obviously you take out the loan and you go to school. There are different kinds of loans out there. You'll get consideration for federal loans or not subsidized, but loans when you fill out your application, the FAFSA. You can obviously take out private loans. I don't recommend that unless you have no other option, because private loans are going to be much more expensive, and a lot of times you have to start paying them back, while you're in college. So your best bet would be to fill out your application and see what kind of loan is available to you, on the basis of your FAFSA application. And you'll get that information in your financial aid package from the college. It's really important to understand, if you're getting a loan, where it's coming from, when you start to repay it, how much it's going to cost in interest. And so those are really good questions to ask the financial aid office at your college, before you jump in and say, yeah, I'll take this loan.
Yeah.
Just for Dreamers, FYI, DreamAct students who are attending a CSU or a UC, there's a Dream loan that they're able to get. They need to go directly to the financial aid office at those schools to apply.
Right. And then if they get those loans that are under Title IV, which through the government, those loans they can not have to necessarily pay while they're in college. It was when they when they stop going to school full time, then they could just do payments along the way, which will be very different from a private loan from a private bank.
Correct. Exactly. And certainly much better than a private loan.
Oh, yeah. So some students may be offered parent loans. Do they have to take them?
No, I mean, you're under no obligation to take any loan. And so the parent loan basically means the parent is taking out the loan on your behalf, or sort of co-signing for that loan. Do you have to take it? No. Should you take it? It's up to your individual circumstances. Again, if it's the difference between going to school and not going to school, you're probably going to end up taking it if that's your option. But again, as with any loan, you want to look at exactly what it means and how it gets repaid, and what it's going to cost you, and if it's feasible for your family to do.
Now, there's some families out there who say, I've never received financial aid ever from middle school or high school. Is there any chance I could still get some help for applying for financial aid for college?
Yeah, there's always that opportunity, and it's really contingent on where you go, and and a lot of other factors. So that's why we tell people, apply regardless, and continue to apply. Circumstances change. Remember that typically if a school is more expensive, your need is greater, and you have more opportunity to get aid. So yeah, you should apply. You should absolutely apply and continue to apply. We've had students who literally will go through the first 3 years of college and not get anything, and then, lo and behold, their senior year, they'll get a competitive Cal Grant, for example. So, you want to apply every year.
Okay, right. And yeah, because your income changes every year, possibly as well, too. And some students will say, my parents always submit their taxes late. Will that hurt them when they applied for financial aid for college?
Probably not, because, as you probably know, that we're using what's called, prior year, which essentially means we're using tax information from 2 years ago. And so that's what has allowed students to fill out the application earlier in October as opposed to waiting until January. And, even if parents are late filers, typically they file taxes, from 2 years ago, and that's the financial information, that will be used on the application.
Yeah, and I want to tell our listeners, whether young or old, that, you guys have been really prominent now on Instagram at CA Student Aid or Twitter Student Aid, so that they could also get more of this information in case, because financially it's so much, but they could get a lot more of this information. You guys always put that message out there for our families, in the community. And what is work study? A lot of students are wondering, what is that?
Well, work study is a federal program. It can be part of your financial aid package. Work study is a program that allows you to work on campus to make money. So it's a great program if you're eligible to get it because, one, you have the convenience of working on the actual campus. Although in some cases there are some off-campus sites where you're still working. It's part of the university or the college. But typically it's on campus, and you work and you earn that money, and that can help you, pay for things that you need for college. It's a federal program, so that means that DREAM Act students aren't able to get the traditional federal work study. However, a lot of UCs and CSUs now have sort of quasi work study programs that are geared specifically for dreamers. So they're not using federal funding, and they're able to do that. So if you get work study, you should consider it. When you fill out your application, there's a question that says, would you be interested in work study? You should always say yeah, because it's a great option. You may not end up not needing it, or you may determine you don't want to do it, especially if you have a really heavy class load. But it's a great program.
Oh, no. And a lot of people don't realize there's research study done on students who've done work study, and they tend to show that they have a higher graduation and retention rate in colleges than most other students. Because I remember when I was working at the grocery store supporting myself through school, when I had finals, I still had to work till late at night and then had to save for finals. So Workstudy also offers a lot of students more flexibility with their schedule too than most other jobs. So some students also may have some questions about scholarships. So where can they find scholarships?
Yeah, there are a lot of outside scholarships. Like I said, let's go back to the FAFSA and the DREAM Act application. You definitely want to do that, because that's going to give you, the bulk, the vast majority of the financial aid you could potentially receive. But above and beyond that, there are hundreds, sometimes thousands of outside or private scholarships that a student can apply for. And they are offered by companies, by service organizations, by unions, by churches, by, you name it. So, and I think sometimes those are overlooked. There are a lot of websites that can give you that information. The one thing I'll say about these scholarships is if you have to pay to apply, then, probably not a good idea. So most of the application process is free for the scholarships. And you can go to a site like fastweb.com or scholarships.com, or there's a number of them. And you can actually plug in your information, and it will show you, potential scholarships, because a lot of times it's based on, it could be specifically for something that you're studying, or from, for a student who lives where you live. So you want to go and you want to check it out.
Okay. And then do students have to pay back these scholarships or grants?
No. I mean, typically they don't. And a lot of times they're small. So, sometimes they'll be it could be as little as $200, but others, can go up to, $1,000 or more. Sometimes a lot of them are just a one-time scholarship. Sometimes you'll get some that, will pay you money every year. So, you want to apply. There's some really creative ones. There's one where if you make your prom outfit out of duct tape,
right,
and you send in that picture, you could win money. So there's some really cool ones out there. But typically, no, you don't have, you would never have to repay those.
Yeah, and I also tell students that even if it's a small scholarships, it could, books are expensive. And also, if you do scholarships earlier in your high school or even middle school career, those are awards that you could put on your college application that some schools like the UCs and private schools will look at, which also help you beyond even the financial realm. So they're a great opportunity. Now, some parents have also asked a more complicated question. Parents ask, if their assets are mixed in with other family members that are not in their household, do they need to report their own percentage, or only those who are the primary owner of their asset, whether it be a home, another property, or, let's say it's a fund account? Right.
Yeah. So, I'm not a financial specialist, but if you have assets, you have to report those assets, even if it's a percentage of a larger, if you own, your family owns a second home or rental properties, you would have to report the corresponding amount that applies to you. And so obviously that can get convoluted. The one thing I'll tell you, though, is that, when you fill out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, there's a lot of questions that say as of today.
Right.
And you're providing that information, on the day that you're filling out the application. So, for families that